And I would. I would. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. Oh, tonight on the show, on the podcast, I have someone who is truly an integral part of my musical journey. That is Vic Bondi, from Articles of Faith, from Jones Very, from the band Alloy. And if you don't know Alloy, it's basically Vic with Dag Nasty. Just fucking incredible. Then he was in Eidolon, and then he was in the supergroup type situation, Dead Ending. They're still together, just, you know. Also, in another supergroup type situation with Jay Robbins and members of Kerosine 454 called Report Suspicious Activity. So Vic has all of these incredible bands and records in his hip pocket. He's accomplished so much. What's next? Where do you go from there, right? Well, apparently, you take elements of jazz and surf rock and hardcore and punk and rock and roll and fucking Black Sabbath and everything awesome in music, and you concentrate it, shoot it through a very dark prism, and you get Redshift. Redshift is probably the biggest musical departure in the entirety of Vic's career, and it is potent. It is muscular. It is absolutely fucking brilliant. The album, Worst Timeline Possible. It's only been out for a short period of time, and album number 2 is already locked, loaded, ready to go. I've heard it, and by God, they've done it again. Lightning in a bottle. Twice in a row. You can hear it behind me right now. He's still got all that venom and vitriol, but it just comes to a different head. But that's enough about that for right now. We're going to hear all about the album, all about the band, and a whole lot more. Vic and I get into some pretty interesting topics of conversation, as you'd imagine. It's Vic Bondi, my God. He's lived one hell of a life, right? We go places I didn't think we'd go, and I'm happy we did, because it was a real eye-opener, and it was a beautiful conversation. I can't wait to talk to this man again. I'm so glad I'm in touch with him. He's important. He's just an important figure in music. But we got to get down to some business. Got to pay some bills, so check it out. Like, subscribe, share my posts on Instagram. Help us get out there. You know we deserve it, right? You're listening right now, so you like something about what I'm doing, or maybe you just like Vic Bondi, or maybe whatever. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you love to hate me. I have to keep the lights on somehow. So, if you want to donate, that'd be beautiful. If you want to become a subscriber and get an extra episode that no one else gets every month, plus a copy of the soundtrack, the compilation record, you get that sent to you gratis. It's part of the deal if you're a subscriber. If you subscribe monthly or yearly, doesn't matter. That's a paid subscription. It's not subscribing on Instagram. If you don't want to do that, that's fine too. But if you do, you get the extra episodes. You're going to get the opportunity to be a part of a live stream event with a pretty well-known artist. More on that as it develops. But we're going to give you all the opportunity to sit in on a live episode of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things. And if you're good little people, right, I'll let you slide in and ask a question. Okay? How's that sound? Pretty cool, right? Who else is doing that for you? Just me. Just me, man. That's it. Nobody's doing that for you. I'm doing that for you. So yeah, anyway, like, subscribe, wherever you're streaming this, rate me on there. Follow the show, please. Please follow, rate it, review it if you have time. And thank you. If you're taking part in this in any way, shape, or form, thank you. I do not want to skip over the fact, that David Crosby of Crosby, Stills and Nash and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young has passed away. The guy had one hell of a life. He left behind a beautiful legacy, a body of work. Bless you, man. I hope you're in Valhalla, eating, drinking, and being merry. And I'm sure we'll all see you again. With all of that being said, I give to you Vic Bondi, Redshift, on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
Was it something I said? I said something so wrong. Was it something I heard? I heard something so wrong. I love someone so bad. I said I love someone so strong. I heard someone so bad. I said I love someone so wrong. This is not alright. This is not polite. This is not a fight. This is not a sight. This is not alright. This is not my life.
Apparently I am, yes.
Yeah. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, there he is. He's not happy with me right now.
He's 3, you say?
He's 3. Mom decided to go out with her friends for the night, leaving me to my own devices, which is normally okay, but apparently he got the vibe that I had something else going on.
Oh, jealous.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. My daughter, not so hard.
Yeah. My daughter wasn't hard at all except for 3. That was the only age that I had any difficulty with my daughter, and it just gets better every year with her. So
Yeah, that's where I'm at with the daughter, but the son seems to be building to a crescendo of just brutality that can only be construed as like father, like son.
yeah.
So I wanted to start off, which not to sound like a sycophant, but articles of faith are pretty much, like, to start out with, like, a part of my social consciousness. What you've done with that and with your first solo record really kind of it motivated me in a way, because in 1988 I was 13 years old, and that kind of helped accelerate a child of a hippie, already anti-establishment, becoming even more vehemently anti-establishment via your lyrics. So I owe you a great debt of gratitude for my life's trajectory. So thank you.
Yeah, there you go. I've always been part of the 3-minute left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that we've come into a time period where the left as we know it isn't really left anymore, which is disconcerting in a very, very unique way.
Yeah, the right isn't right anymore either. So
no, they've gone straight fascist, and the left are what the right were, which is terribly frightening, and also it was foreseen, I think, by not only George Orwell, but by those that we know as the Russian thinkers of a certain time period. I think they'd foreseen all of this too. I think what we're coming to now is, that tectonic shift where everything builds and builds and builds to where it self destructs and implodes. Hopefully I get to see it implode, because I'm growing rather despondent with the status quo as it is right now. But
yeah, well, social collapse can be pretty freaking messy, man. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I'd never particularly wanted to see it, but I'm hoping for a swift resolution. But to kind of like catch us up to where you're at now with Redshift, taking into consideration everything you've done from like dead ending, with the hardcore of it all, dead ending to me feels like you're still injecting that same, the same ideas into something that's more akin to like Link Ray or Man or Astro Man. So you're adding
Redshift.
yeah,
Yeah.
a bit more tuneful, a bit more rock and roll, but still of the same spirit. What was kind of like the impetus of Redshift for you?
Well, I mean, every band that I've done has been slightly a tangent away from the other, right? You're like a shark, you got to keep swimming forward or you die.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Ending, RSA, they're both still projects. I mean, if the problem with RSA and Dead Ending is everybody's spread out all over the country, so it takes a lot to motivate us to get back together and play. With the last RSA time was after Trump was elected, and then Darren was just like, this motherfucker, we got to do a record. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then with Jeff and Joe and Derek and Dead Ending, we've only played like half a dozen shows, live shows. We've probably played just slightly more live shows than we've put out records. So Dead Ending's really great band from the standpoint of it's so rooted in hardcore that any song that anybody brings to the table. And what's great about that band is all four people bring music to the table. Actually, that's true in RSA too. Everybody brings music to the table. But when, with Dead Ending, it's just like, oh, here's a hardcore song. Boom. That's just like, I put some lyrics on it. We're good to go. It's very instantaneous with that band. It doesn't take us 20 minutes to take a track and just lock it. It just is really seamless. And it just comes from all four of us being absolutely rooted in the same place. With Redshift, not at all the case. I mean, like, I'm the only guy from a hardcore background. Mike Katz is a jazz teacher. He makes his money playing trad jazz with the upright bass, and Adam Gross is an R&B guy. His big band in Seattle is Battlestar Kalakala. It's like this 14-person Tower of Power R&B funk festival band, man. And all Adam does is sit back there and just finds the groove and just grooves in, right?
Yeah.
So with Redshift, all the bands that I've been in, including Articles, every band that I've been in for the most part has been a band about the joy of the band is the collaboration, is working stuff out with other folks. But I've never been in a band where the musical grounding is this diverse, right? So one reason surf is such a big part of it is because it's kind of the common ground that we can find, right? And also part of the thing with Redshift is the ambition of all of us to grow our skill set a little bit in different directions. So for me, I mean, Mike is a professional jazz musician. Adam is a music teacher. He teaches at in Shoreline, right? For me to play with guys who can read music and know music like the back of their hand, and I'm a musical illiterate, means that I have to up my game. I have to be a much better player than I've been in the past. And I wanted that. I really did. I think, in Dead Ending, I didn't play very much guitar. It's really Jeff's guitar. And I wanted to be in a band where I really had to play a lot of guitar. And in this band, it's all me. So, I have to be good at it, and I have to be as good as Mike and Adam are. So that's my ambition. I think for Adam and Mike, it's to play a more visceral style of music. Like, my approach is extremely gut-based and visceral. And I think the two of them, I don't want to speak for them, but they're schooled. So their approach to music is very cerebral in a lot of ways. And I'm just like, no, just do that. Just do that. I'm like, always like, you stumble onto something and you're like, oh, that's the thing to do. Do that. Right.
Yeah.
So, those songs, a lot of the Redshift songs are bringing riffs to practice, and then we build the riff out. And so it's kind of great. The sum is greater than the parts sort of thing. But the reason that it's a little bit different than Dead Ending or RSA, which are both still active bands, I guess, is because we're coming from a divergent perspective. The other thing is, it's the first band that I've been in after living in Seattle since 1995. So, I've been playing music since, for 40 years. And I did from like 95 to, let's say, 2021, when Bush acceded to the presidency. I didn't really do a lot of music. I just did the Morello project thing.
Yeah.
And so I took a little bit of a break there, but this is the first band that I've been in that's actually in the city of Seattle and plays in Seattle. We're playing tomorrow night at the Central Saloon down in Pioneer Square. So it's great.
So I guess what also makes this different is the fact that it's coming from, I guess, a more traditional standpoint too, because going back to your original recordings, like everything you'd done in those days was very much flying in the face of what was traditionally the norm, so to speak. Hardcore punk, what have you. Now, like, you're taking what is, I guess, traditionally a rock and roll form. Okay. Yeah. Something that people have been using for like 60 years, 70 years.
Yep.
And making it your own. Is that its own kind of reward and its own sort of challenge in and of itself?
Well, yeah, because I don't think that on the new record, we have a lot of instrumentals, and a lot of them have a surf form. But I don't, if you listen to the first track on the record, Orion, that doesn't sound like surf, man. It's pretty much in your face. It's a pretty aggressive take, and then and most of the songs on the record have that sort of dialed in level of aggression that takes it in a little bit of a different direction. And the new record that we just finished, it really goes in a new direction. I think that the whole point was, surf music was music that I heard when I was growing up. Surf music, I was a teenager. I lived in Pensacola, Florida. We used to go down to the beach, 6-pack of Miller beer. I would fart around on the board, and I was terrible surfer, land on my face, but it brings me back to that. But I don't want to be beholden to it. I want to take that tradition and add a layer. I want to take that tradition and add some feeling to it, right? Like Lights Out on the new record is definitely a surf song, but it's also definitely a punk song, and it's definitely a heavy fucking song. So like, it's not like I'm not Jan and Dean. I'm not the Beach Boys. I'm not like, there ain't no fucking Good Vibrations in 2022, man. They ain't.
Yeah,
so
but
we're gonna set a different vibration here, man.
But I think if we take ourselves back to like the Dick Dales of the world, Dick Dale was although very much a guitar virtuoso, but also he did kind of like dig into some really crazy guitar
Dude,
sounds, you know?
that guy, he's amazing, right? Like,
Yes.
and not just his guitar playing, which is just stunning, right? And yes, I mean, I've been playing. So one way that I have been working my way up as a guitarist, so I get to the competitive space that Mike and Adam are already in, is to play Dick Dale songs all the time. And Miserlou and a bunch of what's the one song I've been playing? Shit, I forget. Anyway, I've been playing a lot of Dick Dale, but like the beyond the guitar playing, which is stunning, right, is the way that he synthesizes music, right? So this is a Lebanese American dude from Massachusetts who moved to Southern California, right?
Yeah.
And he's got like Arabic music in there. So a lot of the scales are Arabic scales. He throws in this whole dollop of Mexican mariachi shit into it, right? Like I'm just it's just this wonderful Southern California gumbo that he puts together, man.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the diversity of the influences. I love the little spice that he throws into this shit. You know, my ambition is to play as well as him one day. So I'm working on it.
And there's a nuance to this that's very dissimilar as well from everything you've been doing recently, because it, like, lyrically, yes, there are still those same tenets, but it's not as, like, fuck you Trump kind of, like, it's not that in your face. The art is not lost on you, and I find that refreshing as well, because you're still getting your point across without having to spell it out for everyone.
Yeah.
Is that maybe because people know what to expect from a Vic Bondi record? I'm sure anyone who's listening and is seeking it out because of you, yes, they know what's coming. But you know what I mean? Like, you do have a brand, whether you realize it or not, because you've never stood for anything but the proletariat, and the working class. There's never been any bones about that. But that's kind of what I dig about this. It's still there. There's still a rallying cry. There's still a war chant to it, but it's not just that. There's that extra something that I think you can change some hearts and minds with, because it's not just blah. And here it is in your face. Like, there's more nuance to it. I think that's a big strength.
It is more accessible. So, one of the things with Dead Ending, if you look at the lyrics of the Dead Ending records and you look at the lyrics of Redshift, they're almost identical, but the form is definitely different, right? So a song like It Can't Happen Here, or Ego Not, or State of Mind, right? Ego Not, some are born to rise above, the rest are born to waste, right? Like,
Mhm.
But the song's got that whole rockabilly shattered chords. I'm just playing two fucking strings. And so it's got that whole sort of derived rockabilly verse to it. And then we go into the hardcore part, and then we go into the screaming, the screaming rock stuff, which is, but I'm screaming, death from above, or it trickles down, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have images of satellites collapsing out of the sky,
and that's, I think the imagery is a big part of it, though, too. And that's never kind of been lost on your lyrics, but I think this does paint not just a broader picture, but a more balanced picture of where you're coming from.
One thing that's really exciting about Redshift live shows is there are a lot of women coming to our shows, and I love it. It's like, in most of my career, the audience has been primarily male and predominantly male. And I appreciate the men that come to my shows and their engagement with the music. But it's nice, you know, besides my wife, to have somebody in the audience, these women that are dancing are just grooving to the music and enjoying it. And I really like that. I mean, we have a lot of women in the shows, and it's just great to have enough of the music, you know, Articles of Faith in the hardcore days. The concept was to make music that was so extreme that it would create boundaries, right? Like, if you wanted to listen to our music, you had to come to our worldview. You had to come over to our perspective, and everybody else, get the fuck away from us, right? You know, it was a very us or them moment. And this band is still a very heavy band and still makes its point, but it's porous enough that we're able to draw a much broader crowd than we have before. And I'm pretty excited by that. I mean, you know, for the hardcore purists, they'll be like, well, you're not as tough as you used to be. I don't know if that's true. One, because some of the songs on that record are about as tough as anything that I've written. But, you know, they're the same people that just rake Rage Against the Machine over the coals because they're a big band and a lot of people like them. I mean,
which is a bunch of bullshit.
Well, I mean, who's, in terms of the 3 minute left, who's getting the message out, man?
Well, we have to win hearts and minds, Vic.
Yeah.
And that's what it really comes down to. So if people want to like shit on Zach because he's not in Inside Out anymore, well, guess what? Inside Out was 1992.
Yeah.
Like fucking, I went to see Inside Out. 18 people were at the show. Okay. Now Rage Against the Machine plays. There's tens of thousands of people watching, listening. And if he gets to a 16th, a 32nd of those people, we're inciting real change here.
Yeah.
So who's the fucking sellout, man?
And honestly, Rage is the better band. So like, yeah.
Well, yeah, they are. And as much as I love Inside Out, I love Vic Takara and everyone who was in Inside Out. Rage is, they're the more expansive musical package.
Rage. So people dunk on Rage all the time. Mostly they dunk on them because they're so successful, and it's easy to say, "Oh, Tom Morello lives in the Hollywood Hills. He's such a fucking sellout." But like, live,
where would you live if you had that money?
Live, that band. I mean, I'm anxious to see them next year when they come up because I haven't seen them in a very long time. But like in the heyday in the 90s, that band live was one of the top 5 live bands that have ever walked the earth. They were ferocious live.
Yes.
You know, who's better? Bad Brains at the peak of their day? Yes. Fugazi at the peak of their days? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Beyond that, I don't know. You're going to have to convince me because that band live, circa 1996, 1997, that band was untouchable. They were amazing.
And still all the hardcore for my money. In truth.
Yeah.
Because the message was there, the aggression was there, the angst was there. But moreover than anything else, the anti-establishment sentiment that was very real, very palpable, and very hard on sleeve was fucking there. As anti-establishment as Phil Oakes or Bob Dylan was.
Yeah.
And I love them too.
Because those guys lived it, right? Like, so that's the other thing is just as individual human beings, a remarkable crew, you know, and Zach and Tom both very different personalities, but like, you know, they're walking and talking the same thing. It ain't bullshit. They're not fronting. So, yeah.
And who would know better than you, in all honesty? Because I mean, you know, and having been a part of all of this and lived it, you know, I think you can speak to the fact that there are very few people from our world who spoke it and talked about it and sang about it and put it in lyrics, on t-shirts, on fucking flyers, who didn't really mean it, or did it because it was cool, or did it because it sold records, or whatever. Who still who's still making this, who's still living this and speaking it and making it real?
Yeah.
Very few. Very few.
I mean, you know, there were a lot of bands back in that day. Well, it would be incorrect to say nobody in the early 80s wanted to be a rock star. Like, I think, though, the concept of what the rock star was radically divergent from prior, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like there was a very strong ethos in the early 80s about transforming the business of music to make it more equitable for the musicians that were part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that agenda actually did not succeed. So, you know, for all of the independent labels that came up, you know, from that day, there's probably 2, maybe 3 labels left, right? Like you still have Discord. God bless Ian, right?
Yeah.
You still have Alternative Tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Epitaph, but Epitaph is a little bit later and is not quite the same entity, and certainly has been integrated into the business in the way that Discord and AT haven't been, right?
Maybe Revelation. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, they came about in the late 80s, right? So
yeah, about 86, 87 with the Warzone 7-inch. Yeah.
So like I mean, that agenda to change the music business itself, I don't think we were successful with. We were successful at changing the form of the music that should proceed. So there is no Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam without, you know, Minor Threat, Articles of Faith, Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, Bad Brains. You don't get it. You don't get that music later on in the early 90s without those predecessors. But also that's not durable, right? Like, so when does the grunge thing tap out? 87, 88, 97, 98, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make it into the aughts, you know, and a lot of the a lot of the hardcore that makes it into the end of the 90s and the early 00s, it's all that New York bro hardcore stuff. Like, zero participation from women, and probably zero participation, almost no participation from people of color,
unless they're like directly from New York, because a lot of the New York bands consist of people, at least partly people of color. But there's my problem with it, and as much as I loved a lot of those bands, it's very broy.
It's so bro, man. I mean, I can't go there. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me. I don't know whether it's, you know, getting married, having a daughter. I don't know whether that's, you know, that expands your brain a little bit in terms of what it is. But it's also, I think there's a thing with young men. There's this tribalism that men get into when they're going from 15 to 25, where as they launch themselves into the world as individuals, they're apprehensive about it. I mean, this is probably true of women too. They're apprehensive about it. And so they hide behind a lot of the conventions of their tribal gender. And so, you know, the bro thing in shows was it's almost a defensive posture.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's I'm so tough that I'm not vulnerable. You'll never be so tough that you're not vulnerable. It'll never happen.
No.
Right. But there's this effort to do it. I mean, the only people that aren't vulnerable are fucking psychopaths.
Pretty much. Right? Sociopaths. Yeah.
Right. And so you'll never be so hard that you're not soft. You'll never be so hard that you're not vulnerable. You'll never be so independent that you wouldn't suffer the loss from someone you love, right? Like, to be human is to be vulnerable. To be human is to recognize that. And you can really embrace it. I mean, we make each other stronger together. You cannot run this race by yourself. So I always felt like a lot of the bro characteristics of hardcore kind of bummed me out. And I'm guilty of it as anybody, right? Certainly Articles of Faith was kind of a macho band.
To a point.
To a point. I didn't intend it to be.
No.
I mean, we wrote, in your suit and I objectify, right? So I don't know how, we certainly weren't. Yeah, the New York guys, they really sort of turned that knob to 11, didn't they?
Yeah.
I guess we were never close to that. So
no.
Yeah.
No, and especially when you consider the proximity to bands like Embrace or Fugazi to Articles of Faith. Articles of Faith are pretty much universally renowned as one of the progenitors of what people in my age group considered to be melodic hardcore, which was later dubbed emo, which I hate the term because people don't know what it means. Emo means emotional hardcore, not this eyeliner flat ironed hair thing, which look how you want. That's beautiful. Good for you. But it has nothing to do with form. Emotional hardcore to me seems very Articles of Faith, seems very Fugazi and Embrace, seems
or
very
Joe's
right.
Berry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, like the type A emotional hardcore band is like Dag Nasty, Articles of Faith, Fugazi, because there's true passion and inclusivity baked right into the very recipe. So to me that makes sense, but I guess to the world at large that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. To me, the broy thing got shed by you guys right around year 3, 2 or 3, and it became more open, I guess would be a great way to put it, because the music itself became more not sensitive, but there was something extra. There was something more invocative of an emotional response other than I'm going to beat the shit out of you right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Articles of Faith was the band from the land of broken toys. I mean, our audience were all the misfits and shitheads and losers in Chicago for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that, I don't say losers for real. I mean, like I'm embracing it, right? Like,
right.
We had, our audience was not, they weren't the art students. They weren't the sophisticateds. They weren't the guys dressing up in oi shit either. Right. Like,
yeah,
we were really people just like walking in, in their Chuck Taylors and just watching a show and going out. I mean, like they were, and we played with all the misfit bands too, End Result, Jesus. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to be one of those like fit people. I've always been misfit. So, yeah.
But to me, like, as far as Chicago's concerned, it was basically just Naked Ray Gun, Articles of Faith. But Naked Ray Gun was I guess the more acceptable sound, because as much as I love Naked Ray Gun and later Pegboy, there was a poppiness and a happiness to it. Articles of Faith went more towards a dissonance, and it cut a different cloth.
Yeah, it was kind of an abrasive sound. I mean, the thing is the canonical Naked Ray Gun stuff is after 86 though, like 85, 86. It's a couple records with John, and like they actually were in their early days much more of an experimental noise band. I mean, early Naked Ray Gun was kind of like, what the fuck is that? Is this towering scarecrow of a human being screaming about, sex? Like, I mean, my God, it was quite the performance art that they would put on early on, and then they created that really awesome tight Chicago sound that's really built around John Haggerty's signature guitar stuff, and then Pegboy just here it is. This is the Chicago sound. Boom, here it is on a plate. That fucking band is so great. I mean,
Cha Cha D'Amour is like a Bible for Chicago.
So before I married my wife, Pegboy came to Seattle and they played a show. And we were just dating, right? We just started dating. I'm like, you want to go to this punk rock show? These friends of mine from Chicago are playing. They're called Pegboy. And like, they're really a great band. She's like, she's not a big punk rock fan. She's like, okay, well, all right. Well, yeah, let's go, you know? And I'm like, I'm trying to impress her because I'm courting her and whatnot. We go to the show and it is a melee. Somebody does something at one point to Larry, and he just hauls off and just starts wailing on this guy. You know? And then the whole front of the place just breaks into this chaos riot. And my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, is like looking at this like, what the fuck? I mean, Larry DeMore almost cost me my marriage. That son of a bitch.
Jesus Christ. And to think like, Pegboy is the more pop oriented mate to Naked Raygun, who are already very poppy and happy sounding. Like you can't be in a bad mood and listen to Naked Raygun.
No.
And then you get into Pegboy, and it's even happier and it's even more pop oriented and more lilting in its way. And somebody's beating the shit out of somebody else at that show. I can't even picture it.
I mean, what kind of moron's going to pick a fight with Larry DeMore anyway? You're going to get your clock clean.
You're damn right. I mean, Jesus Christ, that guy's a fucking mountain of a human being.
Yeah.
So what I guess I'm wondering really is, with Redshift, was there an intention though? We kind of didn't broach that because
the intention was I really wanted to take my guitar playing to another level. I needed to be in a band that would do that for me. So I needed to just sort of step up. Also the thing is, as I get older, we haven't played a Dead Ending show in a while, and I don't know if I can still pull off Dead Ending. I mean, that music is super physical, and as you get older, it gets harder to play super physical music, man. I mean, your body just doesn't move.
Yeah.
So part of it was I wanted to be able to, if I can't impress you with the intensity of my performance vocally or physically, I want to be able to impress you with the intensity of my performance musically, right? So that's really what I was shooting for.
And was there like a group of bands, with the exception of the almighty Dick Dale, that were kind of like informing your tastes at that point? Because like I said, I do pick up like a smattering of, Man or Astro Man, or
no, there's no influences. So the way this came about was again, it has been very important for me as a musician throughout my life to push myself a little bit, whatever I do, right? Like, and so 5 years ago, I had this offer to play in a theater orchestra. And I'm like, wow, I don't think I can go play in a theater orchestra with a bunch of musicians who read music and me farting around on guitar. And I'm like, well, Glenn Campbell couldn't read music. I'm like, all right. So not that I'm in any way close to that skill, but I'm like, well, I could try it. Let's see what happens. So I go and I join this orchestra, and Mike and Adam are in the orchestra. And, surprise, surprise, I'm able to hold my own with a bunch of professional musicians playing. I'm playing fucking Kelly Clarkson songs. I don't even know this shit, man. And they would be working off of the charts, and then I'd have to listen to the first take through the song, and then I'd have to oh, okay, what do I do here? And then I have to figure out the chords and song, and then reinvent it, and boom. I had to work really fast, and I had to work off of my ear. So 35 years of ear training had had some impact. And so then we met that way, and then we start we really enjoyed playing with each other and jamming, and then we start jamming, and then we're like, well, let's just go. Like, and no, there was no model. I don't know that again, from the standpoint of influences, I don't know that there's lots of bands or lots of musicians that we love. All three of us love equally, but I don't know that they form the sonic base of Redshift. I mean, all three of us love Django, and there's no way that there's Django in Redshift. So, I don't know.
That's kind of amusing to me, just because I named my dog Django after Django.
Don't get me started on Django, because that guy could play the hell out of everything.
Yeah. Basically, if you want to like pinpoint a human being that had a virtuosity in whatever instrument they could put their hands on, that's the human right there.
Yeah.
It's funny to me though that you found yourself putting yourself in situations like this. Not funny, but inspiring, because you don't see a lot of guys who come from the hardcore scene at large stretching themselves. You know what I mean? Like approaching music as just an amorphous thing, not just like a form. Like, I have to do this because this is what I know. It's accepting music as a life force.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's pretty punk rock to continually push yourself to do something different, right? Like, it would be unpunk rock to find a groove and just sit in it. That's like the most unpunk rock thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
You got to explore new worlds. You got to look for new things, especially as you get older. It's so easy to be complacent. It's so easy to just fall into a pattern, man. I mean, yeah, I want new stuff. I listen to a lot of new music still. I don't know. There is probably something about, you get your definitive musical forms from age 15 to 25, and those patterns inform everything that you do subsequent to that. There's probably a lot of truth to that. Like, your neurons get path a particular way. But I still try and push out. I think one thing is, as I've gotten older, in Articles of Faith, for a very brief period, when I was super arrogant and super full of myself, I thought of punk rock as like year zero music. We're breaking with the past. We're going to overthrow the music industry. Then we're going to overthrow society, and we're going to institute this world of peace and freedom on a go forward basis. And it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I really probably thought that at age 20 or age 21. I really did. And, it's just not, as I get older, you recognize this wonderful tradition you find yourself in, right? Like, you can discover somebody like Dick Dale. I mean, I didn't listen to Dick Dale when I was a kid. I mean, maybe I listened to some surf music, but in Pensacola, everything on the radio was the Eagles and the fucking Foreigner and shit. Like, I wasn't listening to a lot of Dick Dale. I wasn't listening to Django. I wasn't listening to John Coltrane, right? You don't know that stuff. And so as you get older, when you discover it, you can bring that into yourself, and it can help shape you. It can help change you. It can help charge you. There's so much to go back into in the world and bring forward. The worst thing about the present is the technology that exists around us today is almost designed to evacuate you from your memory, your cultural memory, and your sense of yourself in a timeline of history. Yeah. And the minute that you've eviscerated and evacuated your past, you've actually destroyed yourself, because it's not just a matter of embracing the cultural values that have come down to you from other people. Literally, cognitively, every moment in the present is dependent upon the past. Language. You cannot communicate with language without the patterns that you have learned in the past and what the past informs it. The present is zero. There's nothing in the present. It's a tabula rasa. It's an empty shell. Everything that informs the present is derived from the past and your experience in the past. So if you evacuate your past, you literally are destroying everything you can be and everything you will be. And so, like, as I get older, it becomes more and more important for me to rediscover Louis Armstrong and the Hot 5 and the Hot 7, right? Like, this shit is fucking amazing. Louis Jordan, come on, man. Like, some of this stuff is goddamn rad. This is stuff my grandparents and my great-grandparents were listening to. You're in this long chain of being from people who they were singing songs, you know, in the burning sun of Georgia to keep themselves from losing their humanity. Like, that's our tradition. That's what belongs to us. And that's what you pay forward.
That's modal jazz. I mean, what you're talking about is basically the spirit of modal jazz.
Yeah.
Because what they did was, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be in this key. It's going to be in this time signature. Go. How brilliant is that we get kind of blue, which is, you know, like entry level jazz to someone who's really trying to get into hard bop. Okay. They're going to want to start there and then move their way out. But you have Cannonball Adderley on that record. You have John Coltrane, you have Miles Davis. And what they did was got into a studio and said, time signature, this key, this, go. That's the spirit of modal jazz. That's the spirit of punk rock.
Yeah.
What we're doing by being punk rock musicians is carrying on the same tradition that they started out with. And their tradition started with field chants.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So what it really breaks down to is the ultimate protest, the spirit of rebellion.
Yep.
And that spirit of rebellion starts with the field chant and then goes into jazz, then goes into punk rock, which maybe I'm tooting my own horn being a punk, but to me, that's the impetus. That's the zygote of the spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I think that's what you're carrying forward. But paying that forward is a very daunting task in and of itself too.
Well, I mean, it's gonna require some younger people with a lot of reservoirs of energy to carry it forward, right? Like, so, you know, I can say that, and I can play the music that I'm playing now, and I can keep doing it for as long as I'm able. I mean, like, I don't know when arthritis is going to completely compromise my ability to play. It's going to happen. My mother's hands are gnarled. She can barely hold things. So, like, it's an inevitable truth of my condition as a man in his 60s that at some point I'm going to be incapable of doing the thing that I love to do right now. But, like, that's okay, because my daughter's in a band and she's going to move it. She's going to move it into her own direction. And there are lots of young people that will bring that energy and they'll bring that tradition. You know, Sophia, she, you know, she understands where she's in that great chain of being, and she's much more vested in those spirits than I was when I was her age. I mean, I was ignorant of Coltrane and Miles when I was 21, and my daughter loves that one record that Coltrane did with just the drummer. I forget what it's called, Space Age or something like that. I mean, Sophia's out there in a lot of free jazz territory that I'm afraid to tread in. So, you know.
And I think what makes that important too is the fact that, you know, like, I see children my daughter's age and they're really like, and I'm not shitting on the youth, because I think in a lot of ways this generation have it all over us because they're way more socially conscious than we were, as much as we wanted to be. I think the future is in very good hands with these kids.
Yeah.
In the same token, the music can sometimes be vapid and questionable, but I think
vapid and questionable in our age, man.
Of course it was. Of fucking course it was. Like, we had the bad glam rock happening.
Yeah.
You know, in our time period.
I'm just Foreigner and the Eagles. Come on.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Fucking terrible.
Give me a fucking break.
Like, well, way to bastardize the great form of outlaw country.
Yeah.
And just shit all over it. I mean, Waylon Jennings didn't want that. Like, Willie and Johnny didn't want that. That's not what that was about. Yep. I mean, to me, that was another breath of protest music, another breath of working class music, which is what we were trying to do with punk and hardcore. But like one thing I do want to kind of like revisit with the broiness of the hardcore thing, and how you're seeing girls now more, the ladies and people of anyone throughout the
Women
diaspora.
and actually a lot of non-conforming people too. Like
That's what I'm saying. The diaspora of genders.
We've been playing. We've played a couple of shows up in Bellingham, Washington, which is about an hour and a half north of Seattle. It's a coastal college town, and oh my God, like it's so great. First of all, they have such a great scene up in Bellingham with Proud Failures and Muppet Fetish and a lot of the other bands, and then. But the audiences there are fantastic, and a lot of them are non-conforming, and it's just great. Like you just want people to have a good time, be comfortable with whatever, be comfortable with whatever it is that you're sorting out right now, man. Like,
sure,
God bless. So, those audiences are really diverse, and I love them, and so yeah, I'm kind of really excited about the audiences that Redshift is playing for. They're different than the audiences that I've traditionally played for, and I'm fucking stoked.
Well, and why wouldn't you be? Because that was kind of the point I was trying to get to, where I think this generation does have it all over us, because the whole revolution of gender fluidity and non-binary gender politics, it frees up an entire spectrum of human beings that maybe wouldn't have felt very comfortable in the home that we made for ourselves. And that pisses me off, and it hurts my feelings, because I was a part of a thing that excluded people who maybe wouldn't have felt so comfortable around the macho bravado of the punk thing, when in all actuality punk came from queer culture.
Well, punk was super homosocial too, let's be
yes
honest. So I mean, one thing about the current gender politics though, like I do, and I've always felt this way a little bit, like it's very easy to lose track of the sort of ground truth of human experience when you're focused on gender politics, sex. If sex is the center of your being, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not necessarily a real center, right? Like, ground truth is you have to put food in your mouth, and you have to be able to afford to make a living somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And the way that those relations, those physical relations that you require to survive are organized, that ground truth can be very oppressive of you as a human being, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose we can argue it in many contexts, but slavery, American slavery, is an economic system.
Chattel slavery, yes.
It was racially structured because that was the fulcrum around which it was maintained for almost 400 years, right?
Yeah.
But it was an economic system that benefited a small minority of white men, and they had a vested interest in making sure that system stayed in place. The organization of economic relations today also benefits very few people disproportionately, to really catastrophic consequences for everyone else, especially when you look at what capitalism is doing to the ecology of the planet.
Yeah.
So the issues with, as important as it has been to fight through to issues of gender equality, sexual orientation, and sexual identity, it's not the whole game, man. And if you stop there, we're going to miss the really big thing, which is you've got to put some energy and effort into remoralizing the world. I mean, the amazing thing about the abolitionist movement and the movements to abolish slavery around the world was they were vested in a moral purpose.
Yeah.
and that moral purpose actually trumped the economic relations that existed in the world at the time. Slavery was hugely profitable for the United States. The entire economy around the United States in the first part of the 19th century, North and South, revolved around the production of cotton that was a transatlantic commodity. For people to actually stand up against the dominant economic system of the day and insist on its immorality and insist on its abolition was a remarkable feat. The same thing has to happen right now with regards to climate change. If it doesn't happen, the planet's done, and we are too.
And what's kind of interesting about that is the fact that we kind of have to almost accept some people that you or I would find morally reprehensible in order to do so, because who's championing a lot of these talking points? People like that gentleman who just bought Twitter, who I don't like, but he's pushing a narrative. He's pushing a truth that reliance on fossil fuels is destroying our planet. So what did he do? He made a really good electric car. Is he also a shill for the right wing? Yes, of course. But still in all, he's a step in the right direction. Sure.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I got to disagree with you about that. I mean,
okay.
I he didn't make those cars. First of all, he didn't invent that fucking car.
No, I didn't think he did. He just makes them.
Secondly, the thing is, I actually am very, very afraid of him and his cohorts. So, I've never been able to make a living with music. So my side gig since 1995 has been software development, right? And including working at Microsoft in very senior positions, and I live in a very wealthy city where a lot of the wealth has been generated by software. And I know a lot of people who they have a lot of money. So here's the thing about Musk and his stuff. There is a variation on one thing about Bill Gates. Bill Gates, Bill Gates is and was he was a super geek. He really was about software, right? That's what he talked about all the time. I mean, he was very keen on it. He also was, when I joined Microsoft, it was built around this idea that the talent of the people that worked at the company was its chief asset. So they did a lot of work around nurturing your abilities and your skills. I was a beneficiary of that. Pretty much everything I learned about software engineering, I learned at Microsoft. So in some ways, I wouldn't say it was a progressive entity because it was a hardcore capitalist entity, but it had a very humanist idea around it, which was that, and a lot of goals that the company had while it served itself, they were also organized around this idea of the democratization of information and around this concept that software was going to take a lot of the status quo and disrupt it, which it really did do.
Oh, yeah.
Bring about a more progressive world, right? I mean, Bill was a liberal Republican, basically, right? But the thing about it is, Elon Musk and a lot of the guys like Peter Thiel, a lot of guys who came out of the PayPal stuff. Remember that a lot of the guys that made their fortunes at PayPal weren't the inventors and the people that created that technology. They were the guys that invested in it and glommed onto it and made a fortune because of it.
Yeah.
They're fucking carpetbaggers in software development. They don't care about software development. They don't care about the potential of software development to make people's lives better. They care about the ability of software development to make them richer and to profoundly, they have a vision of the world as an unequal place anyway. They really do believe. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk believe they are better than us.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They really do, right? What's in the stars but fate. Some are born to rise above, the rest are born to waste. That's their perspective, right? That's the same perspective that George Fitzhugh had in 1841 when he wrote Cannibal's All.
Yeah.
And said 1% of people are fit to lead, and everyone else should be a slave, right? And for George Fitzhugh, it meant black or white should be a slave, right?
Yeah.
So, Musk and his cohorts are the libertarian equivalent of that. And what terrifies me about these guys, and Peter Thiel in particular, because he has a company called Planeteer, which is terrifying surveillance software that's being sold to governments all over the world. The potential for totalitarianism in our time is greater than it's ever been in the history of the planet, because the technology that I've been part of for most of my adult life has the ability to invade people's lives, monitor them, surveil them, and punish them at scale, right? The thing in Nazi Germany was you only had so many policemen. You had to have one policeman for everybody that you were policing. Well, it's not an effective force, right? Whereas in our time, you can have one policeman for 100,000 people and then be very fucking effective because of that software. This is going on in China right now, man. Like, what's terrifying about the technology that I've been a part of for most of my life and is going to keep going on into the future is its capacity and its ability to help people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk put us to our knees and realize that horrific vision of Orwell in 1984. Imagine a human being with his boot on his neck for eternity, right? I mean, that's the dystopia we're all facing, which makes it all the more important that you understand where you're coming from, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who you need to oppose. Because in the time frame of my daughter's lifetime, it's going to go one way or the other. Like, the planet's going to become a hellscape, and these sons of bitches are going to use technology to make every single one of us some sort of quotidian entity. Or it's going to go in the direction of we start fixing these fucking problems. We start treating people with the decency that they're deserved by virtue of existing, and it gets better. I mean, right now, I can't tell which way it's going to go, man. I mean, there's good stuff one way and there's bad stuff other ways. I don't know. You got a book of very bad things, man. You tell me.
Well, the thing is, and you kind of like exemplified the point I was drawing to by mentioning Elon Musk is, as people who are opposed to the use of fossil fuels and, kind of like making the earth our bitch by burning these things and destroying, the biome that is our earth. What are we left with? What are our choices? Either going with Ford and GM and burning fossil fuels as our primary mode of getting around from point A to point B, or we choose what can be construed as the lesser of two evils by choosing Tesla, which this guy, in all actuality, does not give a fuck about green energy. What he cares about is getting the mining rights to Mars and all this crazy shit that he's into, and terraforming, and, because that's where he's really headed.
He's just the tech version of Trump, man. Like,
yeah,
you don't need to. Don't make this guy out into a magician that he's not. He's not. Yeah. He's not a technologist. He's not out of our culture. He's not an engineer. He doesn't know how to do this shit.
Yeah.
Right. He hires people to do it. He makes them sleep on beds in his offices, right? In order to do it. Fuck that motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he had quite a payday at Twitter when he's like, you either go hardcore with me or you resign, and 1,200 people resign. They're like, fuck you, I'm out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's garbage.
Yeah. So he's not. There's a lot of young men today who are enamored of atavistic attitudes towards men and women, atavistic attitudes towards non-conforming people, fucking racist motherfuckers, right?
Yeah.
They think in their mom's basement that they're Peter Thiel and they're Elon Musk, and there's these special guys that have been blessed by God, and so they take whatever savings they have and put it in Bitcoin, and they got their ass wiped. Mm-hmm. Like, this stuff they need to wise up. You ain't going to be rich. You ain't going to be special. You need to pitch in and help fix this shit, just like the rest of us who aren't specially gifted and aren't specially strong. We're fucking vulnerable. We're connected to each other and we're connected to the planet. Just step in and help out. You don't need to imagine yourself in some sort of Power Ranger future where you're the, master of the universe and a dominant figure. Guys, especially young men, where do you get this fucking notion that you're going to be that person? Like, if you're not from those families, 9 times out, Bill Gates was from one of those families. Elon Musk was from one of those families. Bezos was from one of those families. You're not going to get there. The number of like self-made men there are, even in tech, which is a really disruptive moment in history, it's a handful, right? Like, you guys need to wise the fuck up.
Agreed. And furthermore, I think the place that we're coming from, being, the people that are kind of seeing this for what it is, I think I hasten to buy into any sort of exclusivity as far as being the woke of it all, but we kind of are, because we've always been railing against what's been handed to us, what's been like the narrative, insofar as, popular culture, politically, what have you. I never bought into these oligarchs that proclaim to be saviors of the new world or whatever, because there's just nothing that smacks of someone of my ilk. I can't be an incel in my mom's basement because I've been working since I was 12 years old or 13 years old with having paper routes and stuff. That didn't make me feel like I was owed anything. That made me feel like I was just like this guy over here and that guy over there. I'm not special. I see you. This just makes me see you more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't give.
Everyone is special. Everyone is special, but like that specialness doesn't entitle you to things disproportionately.
No, and I would disagree and say, you know what, we're probably not special, but what we are is people. And what's great about being people is we get to align with other people. And if those other people you align with happen to be people who care about what happens to us 5 minutes down the road, all the better. And the people who sing the songs and make the music that make the workaday work week more tolerable and make the way the world makes you sick make sense. And furthermore, if you're feeling sick about the way the world is and you don't feel like you're owed shit about it, but you just want to align with other people who are just as fucked as you are, and you don't want to oppress anyone else, you just want to help everybody else come up with you, that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's what everything you've done musically has done for me. And
thank you.
I don't think I could paint a better picture of what Vic Bondi has done for my life than that. I think that's the perfect analogy for it. And I'm a white cisgendered male in America. My struggle is very slim. Okay. I'm married to a black woman. She knows what it's like to struggle. I don't, not really. Okay. I've had a lot more handed to me based on gender bias, based on everything. I've had it all kind of like at my feet, and I still wasn't born into a family where I was going to ascend to some sort of hierarchy, but I was never gonna struggle.
You're never gonna make it onto Jeff Bezos' Dick Sharp starship into space, right?
Right, but I was never going to be cast into the gutter predicated upon the way I looked or my gender or my station in life either. I was always going to kind of be okay. You know what I mean? But I always align myself with something else because I'm the child of hippies. Even though dad was a Vietnam vet, my dad got out of Vietnam, became a hippie. Mom was a hippie. I was raised to feel, period. Not to feel differently, just to feel like, this world is not your bitch. This world is to be participated in. And if you don't love this person over here, at least give them the space to have their journey. And that's why I don't like the Jeff Bezos of it all, or the Elon Musk of it all, because they don't see that.
Yeah, I'm terrified at the instrumentalities that are available to them. To be honest, I mean, everything that you do online is tracked. Everything that you do online is easily classified, and people, you watch people on Facebook just giving their data away, participating in this shit that I know is data mining from. I know how machine learning is set up, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's terrifying to me what Peter Thiel would do to the country with the technology that he has. So the only thing that's keeping them from doing it in a lot of ways are the men and women who are writing that code. And they just didn't, basically Twitter went out on a general strike, right? So,
It is basically the modern equivalent to the Molly Maguires at this point.
Yeah.
In all reality.
And that's one thing I at least in my online presence, I always just throw random shit into the data stream. I don't want them knowing, when I was born, where I went, who I'm in love with, who's my child. I don't want them knowing anything about me that's real. I mean, they got it because bits and pieces are out there, right? So all the more important that then I have to put sand in the machinery, right? So yeah, I was born on July 4th, 1905. Like any human being would see that right away. And they're like, that's not right.
Yeah.
The machine don't know that.
Is that enough though? Like, how do we disrupt the machine in a very, very particular
There's
way?
a couple of ways. One is definitely just populate your data stream with bullshit. Just feed it into the data stream. If you're a guy online, put in a Google search for bikinis. Like just do it, man. Like, put in bird watching, put in, deep sea diving, right? Like put in anything that causes the algorithm to just get mixed up, right? Put your name in with two middle names, two S's, SS or AB or CD, right? Like do anything that you can to disrupt the data mining that is happening every single second that you're online, no matter what you do. Post random pictures, post pictures that aren't your pictures, like especially steal stuff off of corporate sites, put it up on your own site, make it your own. Fuck those corporations, right? Like they can't find it anyway. The data stream gets corrupted, it polluted, it becomes inefficient, right? They have so many routines and subroutines to scrub data and all the garbage in becomes garbage out. So that's one real easy way to do it. The other thing is just to get the fuck off, right? Like Musk taking Twitter was my occasion to depart. Done.
Mine too. I was out. I was done.
And my life was none the worse. My life is not the worse.
Actually, my life is far better. I think Twitter is the garbage dump of the human id. Yeah. Everything terrible about everyone I've ever known is on display in full force, dick out and shaking on Twitter. It is the worst place on earth.
Yeah.
I think if given enough time and enough inertia, this guy's going to come for Facebook and Instagram, and I wouldn't doubt that he gets it.
I don't know that he needs to. They're just as I mean, Instagram has done more damage to young women in this country than Twitter has. So like, there's a lot of badness out there. So, it's the Buddha principle, do no harm, right? Like as much as you can, don't do bad things, don't harm people. Also, like, I really feel like culturally you can spend whatever reservoirs of cultural currency that you have to ensure that people do not worship the idle rich and their stupid fucking projects. Elon Musk is, Hyperloop and Neuralink. I'm going to put a fucking chip in my brain. You won't get a vaccine in a pandemic, but you'll put a fucking chip in your brain, right? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's all the vaccine thing that I think is the coup de grace for the complete and utter imbecile.
Yeah.
I've seen more disinformation passed down from people of our ilk, which is strangely fucked up. How it's the most punk rock thing you could do is be anti-vaccine. How is that relevant in this day and age when we have been being vaccinated since polio?
So this thing is like, you have to adopt some nuanced worldview, right? Like, I could get it. Like, I'm going to trust a corporation to inject shit in my body. I will tell you that when they first started announcing that they were working on the pandemic and Trump was president, I was like, well, I got to see how this goes, man. Like, I'm not going to be the first guy to get that shot. I'm going to tell you right now, because the other thing about it is, a lot of these people are just remarkably incompetent, right? I mean, they're really bad at what they do. That's why they're all bluster and fury, and that's why they're all showmanship, because they're trying to manage the message instead of build the material. So I was really concerned about the way the vaccine had to be developed on this sort of crash program with the government of Trump at the helm. But I mean, and it is punk rock to say, fuck Pfizer, fuck Bayer, fuck all those big pharmaceutical companies, because they're the ones they're charging you $120 for a vial of insulin, right? Like, so I kind of get that piece of the punk rock mentality, but this is about where you have to be a little bit more nuanced in your view. That pandemic was a real thing, man. I mean, people I knew died from it, so it wasn't phony. And you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith that some of these corporations, their capitalist foundation notwithstanding, they can deliver an actual medical vaccine that can mitigate the effects of the pandemic, not only for you, but for all the people around you, right? And that was the point. So your anti-corporate ethos had to sort of sit side by side with your sense of your social circle, right? That you had an obligation to a lot of people. My cousin's wife has had a lung transplant, so she has to live with immunosuppressant drugs in her system in order to survive. Well, that makes her a real, viable candidate for COVID and the flu and any other communicable disease. So, you have to be super careful in situations like you have to have some sense of obligation to other people. And in some ways you kind of like have to, all right, which one am I going to choose? My suspicion about this big fucking corporation or my obligation to Carmel? I'm going to pick my obligation to Carmel.
Yeah.
Right.
And furthermore, like these are capitalist companies. What do they depend on for cash flow? Us. So
yeah.
if we're all dead, how the fuck are they making money?
Well, and actually, you can see Pfizer's genius now on display, right? Like, so if Pfizer had built a vaccine that had killed a bunch of people, where would their brand be today? As opposed to what I just saw online is they're marketing some fucking drug. Pfizer, the company that brought you the COVID vaccine, is bringing you this new drug, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, it's great. I mean, like I work with a lot of marketers in my career at Microsoft. It's like, I could just see the brand wheels going up. Yes.
Yeah.
Brand win. What's your NPS score?
But it makes sense. It really makes sense. Why would you kill off people who are paying your bills, man? Yeah. How could these and I, as you said, I can understand the punk rock like fuck you to I'm not gonna do what you tell me.
Yeah.
But this company's not getting anywhere if we're all fucking dead.
Yeah. And again, like, I have obligations to other people in my community.
Mm-hmm.
This seemed like a reasonable solution to alleviate a disease that was decimating my community, my town, my state, my country, my world, right? Like,
Yeah.
God damn, man. Like, remember when the pandemic started, what was going on in Italy was like fucking catastrophe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're going to have to be a little bit more nuanced in your punk rock outlook. Like, just give it a couple of thoughts extra, right? I don't know.
Let's just be people for a couple minutes before we ascribe ourselves to our subcultures, and that's the part
besides the thing is, punk rock was never about rules anyway. So if you're going to set a bunch of rules and that preconditions your outlook to the world and you're not actually thinking through the issues, that's not very punk.
No, not at all. I mean, that's the antithesis of anti-establishment, which is what the tenets of the punk rock thing were supposed to be about to begin with. So paint yourself into that corner all you want.
Well, listen, my brother, it's Friday night. Friday night belongs to my wife.
Yes, sir.
I need to go spend my Friday night with her. So, yeah. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Listen, I thank you. This has been everything I'd hoped it would be and more. And listen, next record comes out, hit me up again. I would love to have you on.
I'll send you, Jay Robbins did it. So I'll send you a track. So Jay was just here. We recorded 3 weeks ago. We recorded the new album. Mm-hmm. And I mean, some of the tracks are just smoking. And Jay just did an amazing job. He was really something. So just like Jeff did with Worst Timeline Possible. So yeah, I was really thrilled to work with both of them. Jay did a great job. I'll send you a track.
Please do. Please do.
I will.
All right, my brother. You have a great night.
All right. Thank you, friend. Take care.
You.
All right.
Bye-bye. And there it is, folks. I got to hang with Vic Bondi. Pretty amazing. Redshift. Worst Timeline Possible. You could buy it digitally. Head on over to Bandcamp. Type in Redshift. All the music they've ever made together is there, and there's quite a bit of it. The second record is in the can. It's ready to rock. Okay? If you want to buy the vinyl of this album, Worst Timeline Possible, go to midheaven.com. It's a little music distro. It's fantastic. They have the record. Otherwise, you have to send away to England, to Boss Tunage. But if you order it from Boss Tunage, you get the colored vinyl version. And it comes with a little CD, too, for you. Just some food for thought. But the new album is on the way. Like I said, it's awesome. I've heard it. It's like this, but plus some. You get a little more. You can tell they're really starting to feel the chemistry between them. They're expounding upon it. This is heady stuff, man. It's great. Couldn't be happier. I do want to thank everyone for putting up with me this week. I'm not feeling myself at all. I am not with it. I am not my normal self. Feeling a little under the weather. It's not the COVID, but it's something. And, hey, happens to the best of us. Good Lord. He's been Vic. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Talk soon. Be good to each other. Make dinner for your family or something. Be well. Bye, y'all. This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. I mean, the list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR, and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful.